views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, nice to see you. It is time for the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to journalists, we talk to writers, we talk to photographers, filmmakers, anybody who puts stuff out in the borough of the Bronx. I am thrilled to tell you it is college night on This is the Bronx, and we have two young and interesting writers who write for Bronx papers, and one is actually on the radio as well. And that's who you're going to meet today. So let's start right now. And the paper is the Bronx Ink. It comes out of Columbia University. People know it as the Columbia J School. And James Hodgson is with us. Nice to have you with us.
Nice to be here.
Let's just start with the Bronx Ink. What is the Bronx Ink? Who is the Bronx Ink? You don't see it every week. I guess you guys from the school, you got to get it together. Just give us some background about the Bronx Ink.
Sure. So it's an online newspaper that was started by one of our professors, Linnell Hancock, who's been teaching reporting at the J School for decades.
Generations.
Now. Yeah, she's a real legend. So this is sort of part of the reporting class that she puts together. We go out into the Bronx, we find stories, we go through the reporting process with her, and this is where we end up publishing those stories that we work on.
Now for you were telling me beforehand that you come from elsewhere. He's from elsewhere. Talk to me a little bit about your background, where you're from, and how you ended up going to a graduate school at Columbia University.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Vancouver, Canada. I moved to Chicago originally to start grad school in econ, and went from there into the wild world of econ and finance consulting. And
there was a certain sarcasm he said about bio. There was something in there, but I'm not even going to pursue it. But that's okay. Go ahead.
And while I was working, I started writing for a little alt weekly in the south side of Chicago where I lived. And that's where, I really got hooked.
So you weren't sure you wanted to do, let's say, journalism specifically?
Yeah, no, it was really not where I thought I was going to end up.
What was the hook? What was it that made you say, you know what, I like this?
The first article I ever wrote was about a program in the south side of Chicago where they stock a bunch of ponds and they try to get people out to learn how to fish. And it's just like a thing that you can do during the summer to get kids away, off the street doing something. And it was just going out into this community that I hadn't really engaged with living in Chicago, and it was instantly this is all I want to do.
I can relate. Obviously, I've been in this business for a long time. When you do something like that, and it's like the world opens up. Well, of course we do this, and of course somebody needs to know about these programs, so I can relate to that. So now the Bronx Ink doesn't publish year-round, I guess, because they need to have students, so they get ready. It takes a couple of months to put it together, right?
Yeah.
So you've just started publishing again.
We've just started, and actually, sadly, we're just wrapping up, which it's really the product of this sort of 7-week boot camp that we do every year on reporting. It really should be,
all right.
Ideally, it would be a year-round thing.
He's advocating. You, which Ian and I just met, just prior to the program, but the sense that I got from you is you have an inquisitive nature. You were asking me things about me, about the station and everything else. Talk to me about what it's been like in the process of reporting on the Bronx, and we're going to talk about some of the things he's written about housing and some other things. But talk to me a little bit about what's it been like. What's your impression?
Getting dropped into the Bronx, having never, the first time
Here he is in the Bronx.
Yeah, the first time I think I visited the Bronx was just to sort of get a feel, because I knew I was going to be reporting on it.
Right.
And going into a new neighborhood where
Care to say what neighborhood it might have been?
Yeah, so it was Hunts Point. So
Okay.
we kind of get assigned different neighborhoods. I was Hunts Point. and wandering around.
And what was your impression? What did you think?
So Hunts Point, I mean, for me, it was, I stumbled upon a little like tamale shop in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And this is like where it really, like, the Bronx got its hooks into me. Amazing tamales. I think maybe the best I've ever had, called Tamale City, just in the middle of nowhere.
That alone is symbolic, metaphorical for so much of what goes on in this borough. We have, I'm going to define it a little bit, we have such soul, such uniqueness, such character that, of course, doesn't get publicized. Nobody knows about who we are. There are, I don't want to say tamale places like that, but there are concepts like that all over the borough.
Yeah. And, the people who I stopped to chat with, walking around the street, every one of them has a story. Every one of them is an amazing person.
I can't believe it, because now he found out my secret. I mean, this is why I've been doing what I've been doing for so long, because everybody we talk to, you could walk into the pharmacy and everybody's got a thing.
Yeah.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it's been an incredible experience, right?
It really has, yeah. You couldn't pick a better place to learn how to do this craft.
Yeah, because there is a lot to do. Well, where do we want to start? The study of housing court. I mean, housing, of course, is a very, very big issue here. So why don't we talk about what you've written about and impressions?
Sure. So every year we try and put together sort of a special project at Bronx Ink. This year our project is about housing court and sort of related housing issues in the Bronx. My particular piece was about this woman she's a mother of 7, 5 of her children live with her. She's receiving a rent subsidy from the city, but the program that's giving her subsidy is just chronically late, chronically has problems with
So she
paperwork.
has issues. The whole idea is to support her, and yet it becomes an even bigger problem, compounding her issues, right?
Yeah,
This is what
exactly.
we're talking about.
And it's to the point where she was evicted once from her apartment for a month.
And frankly, what'd you say? 5 kids, 7 kids?
Yeah, she has 5 kids living with her. Mm-hmm. I mean, those kids miss school for a
Now,
month.
does she work? Is there, do we know the circumstances a little bit?
Yeah, so events in her life have led so that she's not currently working. Mm-hmm. But I mean, her full-time job is navigating the welfare system that she depends on.
Right. It's an amazing. So how do you break her out of that? It's very easy. There are many people who say eliminate it or whatever. How does it's a rhetorical question.
Yeah.
How does one break out of that? And certainly for a journalist. That opens up a whole. As I said, you walk in and the whole world opened up, right? And then the notion of housing court. Those of us in the Bronx know it's been a disaster for many years. What has been your experience for a woman like this or others navigating housing court? They get a fair shake?
I mean, I think it's an impossible labyrinth.
Impossible labyrinth.
Yeah. You go in. Starting the story, I just went in and just found everybody I could talk to. You talk to landlords, you talk to tenants. Nobody feels like they're getting a fair shake, right?
Neither side.
Neither side, no. Which, I mean,
Here we are in the halls of justice. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, your sympathies can lie on either side, but when nobody feels like the system is working, the system probably isn't working.
Mm-hmm. So taking all of this stuff, I mean, we were talking about opioids too. You wrote about opioids.
Yeah.
I mean, again, pick an issue, you can find a center of it somewhere in the Bronx. Mm-hmm. What do you take now out of the Bronx, and then, after your education at Columbia, you're coming back here to work, I hope, or what do you think? What's next for you?
That's a great question. So I'm still very new in my career, so it really is kind of take what you can get after school.
Well, especially in media nowadays,
Yeah.
I mean, there's no way to know. I saw an article that they were talking about forcing other cable providers other than Optimum and Fios, which do carry BronxNet, to provide news and other services, that may provide opportunities. But local papers are closing. I mean, there's all kinds of things. I'm hoping that you'll say, I got to find a way to stay here because there's so much news here. And then from you and your skills and as a reporter, what do you take away? What do you think these experiences of housing court, studying opioids, working with a family who is in great need, what does that? How does that educate you? How does that help you?
So, I mean, my background working in economics where you sit in front of a computer all day, you get the impression that you can learn the world from, reading stuff online. This is really cemented for me. You can't do this without meeting people. There's no substitute.
To do it right.
To do it right, there's no substitute to talking to a person face to face, right?
I obviously I've been around the Bronx my whole life and been in many of the neighborhoods and things like that. I always try to imagine someone like you from Vancouver, even though you did live and work in the south side of Chicago, dropping into Hunts Point with all the myriad of issues there are, as well as the amount of soul and music and everything else that has come out of that place. To be honest with you, I have a close friend who's an opera singer who lives in Hunts Point. Yeah. There's another story for you. What can I tell you? Anyway, Ian James Hodgson, so great, and will we be able to read more? You're putting more stuff out? What's going on?
So not on Bronx Ink, but we'll definitely have more stuff coming out. I know I'm going to keep working on stories in the Bronx in the future.
Well, we want you to tell us what they are. We want you to come by and share them with us. And good luck, and keep reporting about the Bronx. That's what we all care about. Keep buzzing about the Bronx. There you go. Ian James Hodgson, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back with a WFUV reporter. Don't go away.
Sure, I look cute now, but when my owner lost his job, it was rough. I was living on the street, and one night, me and this Cocker Spaniel got into it so bad, I wound up looking like an ice cream cone. I cried a little bit, but thankfully I got rescued, so I'm running, I'm jumping, all back to my old self. And I'm ready to give unconditional love, even if you put a lampshade on my head.
It's not always easy being a dad.
Do you have panda asthma too? Does that run in the family? This is the home of the most priceless kung fu artifacts.
But when you make an effort...
Dad, we're not supposed to touch anything. Oh, sorry. Go along, son!
It's always worth it.
Whoa! Master!
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
I am gonna get you. I'm gonna get you.
Call 877-4DAD-411 or visit fatherhood.gov to learn more.
You know what, guys? There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
It's Ava, and this is Tess from Vivo's Do It Yourselfie, where we recreate the hottest looks from today's biggest music videos.
After cleaning out our closet, we have a lot of clothes we don't wear anymore.
Like this old t-shirt.
It's not garbage, it's actually a brand new rug.
And to make it, all you need to do is cut, tie, and glue.
Cut the t-shirt into strips.
Tie the strips into knots.
And glue the knots to the bath mat. I love it. Give your garbage another life.
And recycle.
right, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. As I said, it is college night. WFUV is, I guess, the only radio station in the Bronx. It's been here for many, many years. Natalie Migliore from WFUV is with us. Nice to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's kind of go in the same direction that we had with Ian. You're not from the Bronx, and you've come to the Bronx, I guess, to be a student at Fordham, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about where you were and what brought you to Fordham, et cetera, et cetera.
So I grew up on Long Island.
What town, what city?
I'm from Huntington.
Okay.
And my parents were from Queens, so they wanted the big lawn, so they brought us out to Long Island. But I wasn't a stranger to the Bronx. I went to the Bronx for a wedding at Fordham when I was 14 years old.
Okay.
And I fell in love with it. I was like,
really?
Oh my gosh, I want to go here. And
at Fordham University?
At Fordham University.
Right.
And through trials and tribulations, I was not supposed to go there because I got waitlisted, and I wrote the admissions people regularly about what I was doing in high school.
Oh, you're perfect to be an annoying reporter. Yeah. What could be better?
Exactly. But I wanted to go so badly.
And why?
It was just beautiful. I had known people were coming out of it who did great things, and I wanted to be a part of that community. I wanted to be an alumnate that went there and that gave Fordham, that was proud of the school they went to and made the school proud.
Oh, and was WFUV and doing broadcast or journalism or broadcast journalism part of that equation, or that came later when you got to Fordham University?
It came way later.
Really?
Way later. Didn't even know I wanted to be a journalist.
Did you know what you wanted to do when you went to school?
I thought I wanted to do business.
Mm-hmm.
And
now you're going to give them the business. Okay?
Yeah. It completely changed. I just really wanted to go there.
And what was the moment that said, hey, maybe I ought to walk into FUV and see if I could be part of it?
I was taking an Italian class,
okay.
And I saw these big letters, WFUV, 90.7 FM, and I said, what's that? So I pondered it a few days, I thought about it for a few days, talked to my parents, and they were like, just walk in there and see what happens. And I walked in there and I said, hey, I'm Natalie. I would like a job. I'll do anything. I'll clean the bathrooms. And they said...
Hopefully they didn't make you do that.
Yeah,
I know
they
do strange things in broadcasting, but hopefully you didn't have to do that.
No, they said, we don't do that here. You can work here. What do you want to do?
Right.
And I had no clue. They had a music section, they had videography, they had behind the scenes marketing, where students could get involved. And I was like, okay, let me try news. And I tried it.
Tried it, and you were as a broadcaster?
I did a workshop with the news director, George Bedarky, and then eventually met the assistant news director, Robin Shannon, who I owe everything that I know everything about journalism, I owe it to them.
Wow.
I mean, they've taught me. They're great teachers, great mentors.
So now you do newscasts or you do features? What do you do for FUV?
I do everything.
Whatever they ask. Hopefully not clean the bathrooms.
No.
So you didn't go there, I hope.
No, I think at this point I'd be like, come on, guys, this is a joke. But right now, I newscast on Fridays. I anchor on Fridays. I work on long-form pieces. And then whenever they need me to do day ofs, I do day ofs.
Well, you told me just before we started that, because we were talking about the notion of journalism, and you really want to be a broadcast journalism. What do you like about it? You seem to feel comfortable doing this. You have a good voice. I mean, is that part of it? Or is there a way to define it? I mean, I've been on TV a long time and I can't define it, so I don't know, maybe it's a bad question.
It's not about me. It's about when I meet these people and I can get them comfortable in front of a mic or a camera, and you can hear their voice and you can hear the emotion. I can tell you in print, this person's crying, but in radio or in TV, you can see that, you can feel that. And for me, that is why I like radio. It's just, you have to write it. It's so hard to write because you need to give the viewer, you need to let the viewer listen and see with their ears, and then you can put that voice in that really brings it all together.
You know what I've told people for many years, that if you're on TV and I go like this and I'm smiling, people say you're happy. If you're on the radio and you smile, you didn't even walk in the room yet.
Yeah.
So so now let's just talk about the project that FUV has with BronxNet and the Norwood News. I believe the previous incarnation of it was we did, because it's BronxNet, did a thing on gangs.
Right.
And now the series is on guns. Tell me about that, and you've done some work on it.
Yeah, so we've done multiple projects. The one that I was on before was about food insecurity in the Bronx, then the gang that you just mentioned, everything that goes on with gangs in the Bronx, or touching on it, and now we're doing gun violence. And the first installment is coming out within this next week, and it's a partnership between BronxNet, Norwood News, and WFUV, and I get to be the reporter on all ends.
Wow, that's great.
Right, and so it's a 5-part series, and I'm doing the first part, and there are 4 reporters doing the other installments.
You want to tell me what that first part is, or
Yeah.
how it's broken down? I mean, guns is a big topic. It's certainly legislation would be one guess, but tell me what are we getting into?
Legislation's there, but I've spoken with 3 people who have been affected by gun violence in the Bronx in different ways. A woman who had one foot in and one foot out with gang violence in a way, but her grandson was shot, and he was 3 years old, and he survived, and that goes into her story, and she proposed legislation. And then I spoke to one man who went to prison when he was 23 years old, and now he's reformed, and he goes out into the streets in the Bronx, and he tries to interact with kids who he feels were just like him.
And he was there as a result of gun violence in one form or another.
Yes. He went to prison for 2 gunfights that I guess he was charged on, that they know of. And then another young woman, her brother was killed. He was shot 15 times, right on, I think, 163rd Street, if I'm remembering correctly, in the Bronx.
I guess we take it for granted, and we see the numbers in terms of the numbers of guns available, but what you're doing is really very smart, because you're saying, okay, so we have it, and you see the story about, maybe police shot somebody, or somebody shot a police officer, or a robbery or something, but it's all the ancillary people who get touched by that. So if somebody was shot, there's a whole family behind them. If a police officer has been involved in one form or another, there's a whole family behind them. Or if somebody's incarcerated, that also. So it's very smart, frankly, to take a look at it.
Thank you.
And the issue is not just legalize or not legalize; it's the effect of it.
And I think the part that I'm working on, is more about how people recovered from it. Like what they did with the negative and how they turned it into a positive.
People in the Bronx are tough.
They are. Gotta love it.
You learned that, right?
Oh, yeah. Gotta love it, though.
And so, I was going to ask you, when you were talking about wanting to go to Fordham University, I was going to ask you if one of the reasons to go was the fact that it was an enclave in a way, as part of a much larger urban place, but she's shaking her head no. That's right. Let's talk about vaping.
Okay.
You have done a lot of work on vaping. How serious a problem, how widespread a problem is this in the Bronx? I know we did have a death recently in the Bronx of somebody who did die from it. Where is this at? Is this becoming out of control? Like we've had, crack and all other epidemics, HIV epidemics. Are we going in that direction with vaping?
I don't know, and I say this as somebody who's done a few stories on it, but it seems as though the kids who I've walked up to in the Bronx, the students who I've asked, they say to me when, I try to be cool and I'm like, what are you doing? Do you guys vape? They say, no, it's bad for you. I don't want to do it.
Well, that's good.
Exactly. And I think that comes from doing the work on the street and getting out there and asking kids walking home from school, asking parents if they're aware. And there is a very big movement in the Bronx to make sure that these kids are not doing, that they're not vaping. And I think if parents are worried at all about their kids vaping in the Bronx, maybe ask them, but chances are the kids that I've spoken to, they're not vaping.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That's
it's
fascinating.
it's.
I mean, we have an opioid thing. That would be another. That's another
Yeah.
whole issue. I'm curious. These are all obviously important and fascinating subjects. Are there subjects that you say to yourself, "Boy, I'd love to do a piece or a series on something"?
I love education.
Let's get you into some schools.
Yeah, I think the idea that giving children who maybe aren't always thought of, who maybe aren't always thought of, a voice. I mean, they're our most vulnerable. They're our future. And
So you'd like to get in there and hear those voices.
yeah, and the parents who are advocating for their kids.
You have been decorated or celebrated in a couple of ways. Why don't you tell us a little bit? Go ahead, boast. I don't care. It's great. No, but really, it's a wonderful thing to see and hear. Talk about some of the things that have happened to you.
Luckily, I'm a multi-award-winning journalist, and I say that, very...
Here we go. We're showing the award on the screen there. So.
Yes, and that's the most recent one that I was blessed to receive. WFUV gave me an award for excellence in journalism. Those are my two bosses, George and Robin, and they taught me everything that I know about news. And
So I'm always interested. I talk to a musician and I'll ask him about the muse, what it is. So what was it about what you received awards for that was so good that people recognized? Like from your perspective, gee, I did that well. You don't know yet?
I think they see energy in me and spice in me.
We see it here on television on the Bronx Buzz.
I'd like to think that they saw that in me, and I've been there for 4 years since my freshman year.
I was going to ask, so you're a senior now?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I think that
you may have just, I don't think you need to go further, that they saw really good energy.
Yeah.
And maybe when you use the word spice, an angle, a point of view, not always easy to get in broadcasting and, of course, in journalism in general. The future, who knows? Do we say what you want?
Hopefully, reporting in New York City. I don't really want to leave.
Well, we're not going to let you go. How about that? Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone here, the multi-award winning Natalie Migliore from WFUV. Just a wonderful radio station in addition to the great music they put out, but they have a wonderful news organization, and we see an example of why right here on the Bronx Buzz. So thank you so much for joining us. After Guns, what is the next project? We don't know yet.
We don't know. So many things to report on.
Great. Thank you so much, Natalie, and thanks for doing great work in the borough of the Bronx.
Thank you.
All right, there you go. Folks, guess what happens now? Now we finish the program, and we say we'll see you Monday night. This may be a story you want to do on Bronx Talk. We are going to be taking a look at community land trusts and the whole idea of alternative ways of dealing with properties that may be either going out of business or residences not being able to being taken care of properly. And then there's this notion of a land trust that a community can kind of take hold of facilities. Monday night at 9 on Bronx Talk. We'll see you. Good night.